Welcome to Arpa International Film Festival. I'm Maral Kazazian, and I'm the director of the festival this year. And I'm very happy to have this conversation with you, informal conversation about your wonderful film. It's a very unusual, very different type of film, which I'm very excited to be talking to you about it today. So we'll start by just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit.
Hi, everybody. My name is Robert Adanto. I'm originally from Los Angeles. The film you're about to see is called Born Just Now. It's a film I made in Belgrade in the former Yugoslavia, the capital of Serbia. And I shot it in 2016, and the film focuses on an artist by the name of Marta Jovanovic. And she's a performance artist. She's internationally recognized. And it's a film that covered a year and a half in her life, during which she dealt with the end of a 8-year marriage, and it ended in violence. And throughout the course of that year and a half, she created some performances that resonated or were attempts by her to kind of transcend some of the trauma that she was experiencing because of that relationship.
Very nice. How did you happen to find this story, or what inspired you to make this movie?
Well, I was making, in 2015, I was finishing my previous film. And this is my 5th documentary, and all of which have focused on some aspect of contemporary art. The previous film I was making, it was called The F Word, and it looked at radical fourth wave feminist performance in Bushwick. And I was in New York City doing some final kind of touch-up interviews with a woman by the name of Dr. Kathy Batista, who teaches at the Sotheby's Institute in New York. She's a feminist and a feminist scholar, and she's written a couple of major books on performance art and feminism. And she's a dear friend. I met her when she came to my first film screening in Miami during Art Basel, and we've been friends ever since. I made a film about Chinese contemporary art called The Rising Tide. I shot that in 2006, and then I made a film about Iranian female artists called Pearls on the Ocean Floor that has like Shirin Nashat and Shadi Gadarian. Anyways, I was doing this follow-up interview with Dr. Batista, and she said, I want to show you something because I'm going to curate the first exhibition for this Serbian artist I think you should know about. In fact, maybe you want to include her in The F Word. And I was almost done with that film. I just needed Kathy to talk about a couple of the artists, but she lent me a copy of the catalog, and I was really intrigued. I read a bunch of the book that night, but I knew that Marta wasn't going to be right for The F Word, which looked at American women. And I knew, you know, she had such a vastly different experience. You know, she was in Belgrade in the 90s and had to leave during the civil wars. She grew up when Serbia was still socialist, and her grandfather had fought with the partisans against the German Nazis during World War II and helped liberate Yugoslavia and build Yugoslavia. And she had just a very different experience. And even her form of performance art was very different. It was more methodical and what's called durational, like over long periods of time, which is a tradition in that area. And so I ended up Skyping with Marta. Kathy connected us, and Marta had seen The F Word and really liked that. And I just said, I'd love to make a film solely about you. And that worked out, and the rest is movie history.
Yeah, she's a fascinating, very how should I say, mesmerizing, provocative. It's like all these words that it's like they just once you start watching it in the beginning, you say, "Oh my God, is this a crazy woman or something?" And then as you get into the film, you realize she's not only not crazy, but she's brilliant. She's so much full of life, and she has so much to give to her feminism and femininity, and just overall how she can help
The
the
next
world
generation.
overall.
I agree.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, what was your biggest challenge in making this film?
Originally, like with a lot of independent filmmaking, and I'm sure other independent filmmakers can attest to this, some of it has to do with just financial means. I started the financing. I paid for the first couple of trips to Belgrade. I went there in June of 2016, and then I returned in February the following year. And I did see her when she came to New York, but the great thing is I applied for the Sundance Lab. I was living in Miami at that time, and there was a lab for films that were in development. They called them, the Rough Cut Lab. And I submitted 20 minutes of footage from this, and I got picked up. I was one of 3 films in Miami to spend a couple of days in a lab with really great filmmakers and directors from the Sundance Institute for the documentary program. And they gave me a lot of great advice about, what really worked in what I sent them. I ended up actually, for the lab, you had to put together 40 minutes of footage. Initially, I sent 20 minutes, and that got me in. And then they said, if you are selected, though, we'd like to work with 40 minutes. Will you have that? And I ended up putting that together. And out of that, I got a phone call from Anthony Zeiker, and he's the gentleman that produced and created the CSI trilogy, the television show, the 3 different
Yes.
that were on CBS. And he said, I heard a lot of great things about what you shared at the lab. Can I see that? And so I sent him the link, and he had said, I'll get back to you within a week. But I guess he went home and watched that night, and he called me back in about an hour. I mean, literally, he went and watched it, and he was like, what do you need? What do you need to finish this? I want to come on board. I want to be an executive producer. And at the time, initially, like the first 2 times I went to Belgrade, I knew Marta was separated from her husband and was going to file for divorce, but she hadn't divulged as to why and what had happened. In a Skype, she did that when I was in the United States, and I was like, I need to get this story as it's being told. So Mr. Zeiker financed the rest of the film, and I was able to go back to Belgrade for like another 35 days and really shoot and get everything that I would need to complete the story. And so that was like actually the first time in all of the films that like I had the money to finish a film. Most of the time I start something, and then some people come along, they like what they see, and they help me, they come on board. But this time I nearly had all the money up front, and that was a good thing.
Yeah, it's an amazing film. That's all I can tell you. I mean, it's
Thank you.
once someone starts watching it, it's different. It's totally different than the films that you usually see. It has so much emotion and so much artistry, and the music, of course. I just cannot say enough about the combination of the 3 that you put together. It's wonderful. It's a piece of art, I would say, looking at it. So one thing that I remember, one of the comments that find a space for myself with no pain and start again. That's sort of like got me, it's like you can see someone who was in a terrible place, I guess, at one time. And women find themselves, I guess, quite often in those type of situations. And it takes a lot of guts and it takes a lot of thinking to get to that point where you can say that. You know, it's like, what did you really mean? What did she mean in that comment?
I agree. It also takes wisdom, you know, to know that despite what may be going on, what you're experiencing in life, what life has thrown at you, that you have a way out of it. And what's beautiful about the film and beautiful about Marta is that it all starts from her body. Like it comes from her being, and things might have shaken up that body, but she knows the way out, and that's through the body. And it's why I named the film Born Just Now. It was something that she said regarding performance and being so present in the moment, not thinking about the past, not thinking about the future, but just being here, present in that moment. And as I made the film and got to know her, everything is about that centering, you know, and that doesn't mean that every moment she felt like she could perform or even shoot the documentary, but there's a stillness and a calmness that she knows she will endure and make it through. And she's even said after, you know, she's really happy about the awards the film has won. And I just found out it's going to play in Belgium and Berlin.
Wow.
I just found out in the last couple of days it had been screening throughout Poland, and it finished third in a big festival that had like 102 films, and we finished in third. And you know, obviously I haven't been able to go because of COVID. I would have liked to have gone to that, but it's great that it's getting out there and people are seeing her art and seeing the film as a testament to a great woman who happens to be an artist, I think, you know.
I'm very happy to hear that it's still, I know you won a lot of awards already, and I'm very happy to hear that it's getting even more recognition. That's wonderful. So again, I was telling you about the score, you know, that it was mesmerizing. And I looked to see it's Kolya Brand. Is that how you pronounce
Yes,
his name?
Kolya.
Yeah.
Kolya Brand. And another gentleman who lives in New Orleans, Jeff Pagano, did some of the piano pieces. So there's actually two. Kolya did the large sweeping pieces that are at the beginning, the kind of theme. But Jeff did, like, you know, where she's walking in New York with the cabs, you know, like, and that's Jeff's compositions. He did some of those piano pieces, and he's somebody who's actually given some music to 3 of my films.
Yeah. Well, I love also the music at the end when, you know, at the finishing of the film where she's being tied and she's, you know, that finale that you did, it's kind of like puts a really nice finale to the film. But she looks so relaxed, and you know, it's like, do whatever you need to do. I mean, it's like, I'm happy, you know, I know she's going through pain. I have no doubt, you know, and it was like artistry in combining, you know, being in the air and this and that. You know, it's like, tell me a little bit about that whole thing. How, I mean, you did a brilliant job. Let me just put it that way. So just tell me now a little bit about what went into that.
You know, to me and to Marta, like, I placed it at the end because it's her being so free, as you said, that she now can be the substance of another person's art. Like, there's not she's so at ease that she's going to allow somebody else to use her body for his art making. And that shows a level of certitude and calmness within yourself that I've gone through the storms. Like there's nothing really that can touch that part of me that's the most genuine and um, perfect, I guess. And so, yeah, I just thought it's the thing that like she's at ease, and I wanted it to have that kind of closing. I didn't think
So
any.
she was like paying forward to someone else, you know, what
Yes, yeah,
she had gotten. Yeah. Nice, nice. Very, very nice. Are you working on anything new now?
I am. I'm working on actually an animated nonfiction, something that took place in China about 50 years ago. And I've been adapting some first person narratives into a script and working with a gentleman who's in Hamburg who is going to be kind of in charge of the animation aspect of it. So I'm working on that right now.
What else do you want to tell us about the film, and what should our audience expect to see?
I think you touched on some of it in that it's a different type of film, and her story is so layered, like the country that she comes from. And when I've selected subjects to explore in documentary, I always, because I'm an independent filmmaker, I'm always thinking like, what story haven't people seen? What story hasn't HBO done a story about this? Because I'm always thinking like, they're the ones that have all the financing. I'm never going to do a film about global warming because somebody else can do that so much better than me with all the money and all the things that they can do with having a major team like 25 shooters. I'm always looking for that film and that subject that hasn't been told. And it was a challenge to tell this story. I wanted always to show Marta with all the complexity and nuance that she has. But the only way for people to really understand that is like, I have to explain what happened in Yugoslavia. You know, some people have said, well, it was hard to follow. Like, I wanted to see just her. I didn't want to hear the other stuff. But without that, you wouldn't get what all her art is about. You know, there's references like the performance where they're in the Swiss embassy and people are throwing bloody pig hearts at her. Like, that was because that where they were, it was the anniversary of those bombings in Belgrade. And she did that Lubov performance, which is love. And she wanted people to question, but not to forget what had happened. So there's just, there's a certain pace to the film. It's not I think it's maybe a little more European in how it's presented than American documentary. Like I purposely want people to have questions. I don't, when I make a film, try to say, this is the be all end all to this. I want people to be excited about Yugoslavia, about feminism, and to want to know more about it and to see like, what else can I find out about this? This is rich terrain. That's the other thing that I wanted to present too, is that even though it was a socialist country, it wasn't behind the Iron Curtain. You know, Tito broke from Stalin in 48. And even though he was an authoritarian, parts of him definitely a tyrant, he allowed for a burgeoning art scene in Yugoslavia to really do some cutting edge avant-garde work that was more in line to what was going on in the United States than most people realize. And that's pretty interesting too, that, you know, this wasn't Hungary, you know, that tanks didn't invade, and Serbians and Yugoslavians had more latitude in their lives during this time. And I just think that most Americans don't know the Balkans, they don't know much about Eastern Europe at all. And especially that time, they think it's, you know, the Cold War was the United States versus the Soviet Union, but they don't know any of the ethnic groups. They don't know where Georgia is. They might not even know where Armenia is, you know, like, so
Yeah.
I think it's important that, and I also think it's important that somebody who's not necessarily from those countries spends time to do that, because that's what film can do. It's can bring us all together and show commonalities in all of us.
Thank you very much for joining in. I think this was a wonderful Q&A. Thank you for all the information and your time.
Thank you very much.
Have a nice day.
You too.